Hey, thanks for joining me today for episode 38 of Podcasting Your Brand. I'm your host, producer Jaime, providing learning lessons for you to podcast your brand. And today I'm going to share the A to Z of launching your podcast from a technical perspective as a prelude to this next series of episodes I'm bringing you, the technical side of launching. This episode is brought to you by my own brand, Flintstone Media. Listen in and let's do this. Now that you've gone through the conceptual side of your launch and landed on a format for your show, you're ready to begin the technical side of launching your podcast. And I'm going to share that with you here today as a quick primer on how it's done, or a quick recheck if you've already launched your show. By the way, if you haven't thoroughly considered the concept of your show yet, please be kind and rewind back to episodes 32 through 37 and my thoughts before launching. On this episode, I'll take you through the process top to bottom. Then on the episodes that follow, I'll take a deeper dive into each step. Number one, let's get to the fun stuff, the toys. No, but seriously, when it comes to getting into podcasting, even if you're intimidated by the tech, there's a part of you that gets a little giddy over getting some new gear. Am I right? I know I always have. So let's start first with your equipment needs. But please note that your equipment needs really aren't the first step. You need to know the format of your show, which then leads to how you're going to be connecting with your co-hosts and guests, which then leads to the equipment that you need. So if you run out to the store or if you jump on Amazon too fast, you're probably going to waste money on stuff you don't need and end up having to get other stuff anyway. So make sure you go in that order and really know your show's concept and format first. But once you know that, then yes, getting your equipment is the first part of the technical side of your launch. And of course, that starts with your microphone. Now, as I'm going through this rundown, I do want to let you know there'll be a link in the show notes to my equipment guide. So you could actually pull that up and look at it while we're going through this part, or look at it later, or not look at it at all. Whatever you choose. Just letting you know that that resource is available for you. Okay, so let's talk microphones. And there are essentially two different types of microphones to choose from: dynamic versus condenser. And unless you really have perfect control over your recording environment, you have good audio dampening materials on your walls, whatever, like et cetera, unless you have all that, then there's really only one of these types even worth discussing here. You need a dynamic microphone. And most likely, you're going to be plugging your mic straight into your computer. So make sure that the dynamic mic that you choose is a USB mic that fits into your computer's USB port. Then you need to decide whether you need a mixer. Quick hint, probably not. At least not if you're the only one connecting into your system on your end. You can bypass needing a mixer because you'll be able to plug your mic straight into your computer. But I'll be running through various scenarios where you would want to incorporate a mixer and ones where you actually just plain have to on my episode coming up, where I take a deeper dive into equipment. If you've decided that your show's format is going to involve you doing in-person interviews at various locations, then a mobile setup is pretty necessary. I mean, yes, you could technically lug your computer around to do it, but do you really want to? No. A mobile recorder like a Tascam DR40 or Zoom PodTrack P4 or similar device would be much more useful. Just note that you'll probably need your microphones to work with an XLR connection rather than a USB. The difference is the XLR connection, you've probably seen it, even if you don't recognize it by name, is that microphone plug with like 3 little pins in it. That's an XLR connection. And if you're using a mobile recorder device like a Tascam DR40 or Zoom PodTrack P4, then you need microphones that have XLR connections. Just really look at that fine print when you're shopping on Amazon or wherever you're going to be doing your shopping. Now, I can feel myself already getting much more technical and nerdy on this episode than I intended to on just this, supposed to be just like a prelude, a prelude into the deep dive on the technical side. So save it, Jimmy, save it. Okay. Second, if any part of your recording process is going to be done remotely, which is how a lot of podcasts are done these days, quite frankly, then you need to think about how you're going to connect with your co-host and guests. So that's the second step. And there are more and more options available these days to do just that. It's no longer down to just Skype or Zoom. There are a lot of newer options, including Zencaster, Squadcast, StreamYard, and several others that are just ready for you to Google and find out about. People are even using social audio apps, actually, like Clubhouse and Wisdom to record their podcast audio. So there are a lot of options in terms of connecting with somebody in order to record. So, okay, let's get to that third step, the actual recording and capturing of your audio. Now, if you're using a mobile device, like I just mentioned before, then that is what captures the sound. You just need to make sure you have an SD card inserted into it and you're good to go. But if you are recording through your computer at home or whatever, then you need software that can capture that sound. Again, there are more and more options becoming available every day, it seems like, in this arena too. So some quick ones to take a look into are the editing software you're going to be using anyways, also known as your DAW program. So if you hear me say DAW, what I'm talking about is your editing software like Audacity or Hindenburg, for example. Those can also be used to record. There's also Total Recorder, Audio Hijack, OBS, and even the software that you're connecting through itself, like Zoom or StreamYard. But here's the absolute most important thing I need to share with you about recording your podcast. It's so important. It can't wait for the deep dive episode. No. And here it is. Ready? Trust me, you want to learn this lesson now by just hearing about it, not by experiencing. And the lesson is always have a backup recorder going. I repeat, always have a backup recorder going. This cannot be emphasized enough. Okay, the fourth thing you need to work out with the technical side of your launch is the space you're going to be recording in. That where discussion I've been promising to get to you with this whole time. And what I'll share with you on the where in this prelude are the following two general rules. Number one, smaller spaces rather than bigger spaces. And number two, soft surfaces rather than hard surfaces. It's because of these two tried and true rules of easily improving your podcast sound quality that so many podcasters do it where? In their closets. It's true. It's absolutely true. Okay, fifth, now that you have your mic, your means of connecting and recording, and your space to do it in, let's record something. In fact, even though it's super obvious that you need to record something in order to have a podcast, I mean, duh. What's not super obvious is that a recording is one of the two necessary items you have to have for you to be able to submit your show to the platforms. So that's one reason why so many podcasters choose to start with some sort of trailer episode. Now, I'll be going through with you a lot of the different considerations when deciding what to put into a trailer, how to put it together, whether or not you should even have one. I'll be going into all of that on another episode coming up in this series. But for now, just know that you need to have a recorded bit of audio to submit your show to the podcast platforms. And for ease of communication, I'll refer to that as your trailer. Now, in the scores of shows that I've submitted to platforms, I've only had one ever be rejected. And that is the one time I tried to submit a trailer with no vocals, just a music bed. My bad. So I've deduced that was probably the problem. So always be sure there are vocals in what you're submitting as your initial podcast audio track, your trailer. And the other item that you have to have for you to be able to submit your show to the platforms, aside from a trailer, is item number 6 on my list, your show art. To be clear, your show art is the icon that shows up on a podcast platform to represent your show. So it's really, really important that you design it right in order to attract the listeners that you're aiming for to actually tap on it and listen to your show. But from a straight technical standpoint, the most important thing to keep in mind in order to be sure your podcast show art isn't rejected is its dimensions. As a general rule of thumb, make sure you have a square logo for your show that is between 1400 by 1400 pixels and 3000 by 3000 pixels. As long as you meet those dimension requirements, you're probably in good shape with your show art. All right, we're in the home stretch here. Just 2 more items to check off your list for this A to Z launching of your podcast: hosting and distribution of your content. So step 7 is creating your podcast hosting account. To break it down, let's first talk websites, because it's super similar in setup, actually. A website is really just a collection of files that are stored on a server somewhere in the world. Then, when someone wants to visit your website, they access those files through your web browser, like Chrome or Safari or whatever. From the visitor's point of view, it's just deciding you want to visit a certain website, opening your browser, putting in the web address, and boom, you're there. Essentially, with a podcast, it's the same thing. Your show is going to be a bunch of files that are stored in a server somewhere. And podcast platforms in this case are like the web browsers for it. So when someone decides they want to listen to your show, they access it through their podcast player by searching for it and then clicking on it. So what you have to do is get those files hosted on a server somewhere. And that's where hosting accounts come in. Now, when I take my deeper dive into setting up your hosting account in an upcoming episode in this series, I'll give you my rundown as to why it's a totally terrible idea to host your podcast's audio files on your website. But for now, you are just going to have to trust me on this. Don't do it. Do not do it. Don't do it. Instead, create a hosting account for your show. There are a lot of great services to choose from nowadays, but a few that I'll mention here are Libsyn, which is short for Liberated Syndication, so Libsyn, Libsyn. There's also Buzzsprout, which I happen to really love because they're from Florida. So some Florida love. And the OG of podcast hosting, Blueberry, which got a really nice facelift recently. My buddy Todd owns that company, and at the Podfest Multimedia Expo that just passed, he showed me what the platform looks like since being updated, and it looks really, really nice with really comprehensive statistics suites. In fact, one of the reasons why I like these 3 is because of how well they can support the independent podcaster with really understandable statistics. But as I said, there are a lot of options. Just remember that whichever one you choose, make the most of it by filling out every available field about your show, the description, the keywords, etc. All of that adds up to improving its discoverability on the various platforms. Okay, and last but not least is step number 8. In fact, you can even argue it's the greatest step, because what is it? Submitting your podcast to the platforms. The fun part you've been waiting for, right? It's really, really exciting. No stage fright, no stage fright. You're going to push publish and you're going to have a good time and woohoo. Okay, well, the key point here about submitting yourself to the podcast platforms is to make sure you submit yourself to all the podcast platforms. I mean, as many as humanly possible. Now, the good news is that a lot of the podcast players out there pull automatically from Apple iTunes, essentially treating iTunes as a directory. So once you submit your show to iTunes, as an example, Good Pods, another podcast player, will automatically also add your show to their platform without any additional work from you. And so you'll knock a lot of these platforms off the list by submitting to the big kahuna, Apple iTunes. And there's some other really big platforms you also need to be sure that you're on. And as of the recording of this episode, none of these automatically add your show. So you have to be proactive and do it yourself. But you want to manually add your show to Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google, Amazon, and Pickcherries, to name just a few. And don't dismiss the ones that are more popular abroad, like Ghana, spelled Gaana, or Deezer. Get your show on those as well. And always be on the lookout for new platforms that pop up so you don't miss out on opportunities to get in front of new audiences. All right, deep breath. Whoo, that's it. Congratulations. You are launched, my friend. And this was intentionally a very quick overview of it. I wanted to capture the whole process, soup to nuts, in one single episode so it can be used by whomever needs to just go through a quick soup to nuts version of it. But as mentioned and promised, I will continue the series I'm calling The Technical Side of Launching over the course of the next few episodes, taking a much closer look at each of these steps with you. So as always, be sure you're subscribed. And as a quick mention, be sure that you are monetizing your expertise on the OWL app, spelled with 2 W's and 2 L's. Let people pick your brain, but only after they've picked their payment method. Sign up with my referral code, P as in producer, L as in my last name, Lagonier, 954123, and get your $10 credit. That's PL 954123. And you can meet me on OWL for a one-on-one call about your podcasting questions. But until then, I have a whole host of free tips for you on my website. Just check out flintstonemedia.com/free tips. Thanks for tuning in to Podcasting Your Brand, where I'm revealing how you can harness the power of podcasting to expand your brand. So come and pick up what I've been putting down since 2014. Avoid common mistakes and propel your podcasting and branding forward. And if you have questions or are interested in becoming a sponsoring brand of this show, don't be shy. Reach out to me at Jaime, that's my name, Jaime, Jaime at flintstonemedia.com. It's producer Jaime signing off for now. Remember, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So turn that mic on.